All right, so let's talk about calcination. What is calcination? This is the first stage in spiritual alchemy. When we're born, we come into this world as mostly a clean slate, as pure, unmanifested potential. But the moment we arrive, we also enter into the realm of form, of time, of death. This is the price that we pay for embodiment. And as we grow, the ego starts to emerge and solidify. We pick up identities. We identify with stories, roles, attachments. We carry gains and losses, and we get weighed down by these things. And how we were when we first came, which was very light and open, now becomes dense like lead, the heaviest of metals. And the more we identify with these layers, the further apart we drift from the pure spark that we started with. Calcination here is now the burning away of all that dense accumulation to reveal the essential self, the ash that remains after the fire. So you can think of this as a triad to make it easier. Saturn sets the boundary of form. That's the planetary correlate for this stage. And then lead symbolizes the dense, heavy self. Lead is what you have become. That is the metal correlate for this stage. And then fire is the element. It's your conscious will that does the burning. As a spiritual alchemist, you don't just read about calcination, you live it. It shows up as ego death. It shows up as the dark night of the soul. So let's go deeper into Saturn, because Saturn's symbolism is very important here. Saturnian calcination is the necessary annihilation of form that precedes all life. Think about the Big Bang, but I digress. Saturn is also time. Saturn is Chronos in Greek mythology. He's the archetype of time and limitation and necessity. And in the myth, he ate his own children to prevent his overthrow and to maintain cosmic order. We have this archetype in us. It's just a very difficult one to evoke. Now, calcination is the same Saturnian act applied to the soul. It is the intentional fire reducing everything to its essential ash, the complete incineration of all that is temporary, all that is illusory. The Hermeticists, they didn't just say that, oh, Saturn is the planetary correlate for calcination. And this is something that is falsely repeated in New Age alchemical teachings or circles. What the Hermeticists meant is that you must invoke the Saturnian principle upon yourself, or at least allow it to unfold inevitably. Now, we've all heard that Saturn is the planet of limitation, but what is Saturn's ultimate act of limitation? It's death, the end of all form. And what is calcination's ultimate action? It's reduction to ash, also the end of all form. You can now see how these two connect. It's more complex than just saying Saturn is a planetary correlate linked to calcination. They are two expressions of the same thing, that all that is formed must be unformed. When I say Saturn's ultimate limitation is death, I'm speaking of a cosmic principle. Saturn does not only represent death, he embodies the principle of finality itself. He is the absolute non-negotiable limits placed on all manifested things. Everything as we know it exists within time and space, therefore exists within the bounds of Saturn. So break it down like this. Saturn is time, or Chronos. Time is the ultimate constraint. Everything within time has a beginning, a duration, and an end. Nothing can escape this. Saturn is the law that declares all things that are born will die. Think about how we hold on to dear life, to things that are supposed to come and go, how we hold on to dying relationships, dying friendships, things that don't edify us. We resist Saturn's law in Saturn's domain. And then we suffer and we become dense like lead. We become lead because we have failed to realize that for our highest good, nothing can last forever. And this isn't a tragedy. This is the fundamental operating system of a universe that moves in cycles. There is even the Hermetic principle to uphold this, which is the principle of rhythm. That everything flows in and out. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. Saturn is the boundary of form. He is the end of the line for every specific individual expression. Now, connect all this boring talk back to calcination. You can see calcination as applied death, the alchemical burning that enacts Saturn's law. It is a voluntary submission to Saturn. You take your identity, you take your attachments, the illusions you've constructed, your children, like Saturn's children, and you allow them to be devoured by the fire of conscious awareness and will. You use the principle of endings to break down your own limiting psychological structures. Now, why would anyone do something so brutal? Because the alchemists knew that what remains after calcination is the pure white ash. It's not pretty, it's not yet refined, but it's real. It's what you've been running from. Everything that burned away was perishable, and gold cannot be found until the lead is destroyed. So to say Saturn's ultimate limitation is death is to say that he's the gatekeeper of reality. He destroys everything that is not eternal, and calcination is how you step through that gate. This is not just passive suffering. This is an active invocation. The alchemist willingly calls upon Saturn's principle to incinerate the false self, knowing that on the other side of this annihilation lies liberation. Liberation from the law of limitation. The alchemist knows that the highest form of consciousness is death. Still on calcination, as the first stage in spiritual alchemy, I've talked about Saturn's symbolism in this stage. Now I want to talk about lead. If Saturn is the law that all things formed must be unformed, it needs a substance to enact itself upon, and in spiritual alchemy, that substance is lead. You can conceptualize lead as the base condition of the unrefined person. So it's not just merely a metal assigned to Saturn in this stage. It's the starting point of the great work. Now, on a spiritual level, lead represents the unawakened soul, the one who has forgotten their divine origin, the one who lives entirely identified with form. This person is unaware that there is anything beyond the material. This person might feel spiritually empty, completely ruled by their base desires. This is the state of the soul that is asleep in matter. And when you're that unconscious, you automatically fall under the dominion of fate. If you're averse to spiritual speak, don't worry, I got you. Psychology says the same thing in a different language. Jung said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. In other words, lead is the person who has never turned inward. If you haven't done any inner work, if you lack self-awareness, you are run by repetition compulsion. You are simply reenacting old stories, living out old patterns passed down to you from your parents and grandparents. So lead in this sense is the heaviness of an unexamined psyche. We're talking family patterns, ancestral wounds, cultural scripts, that kind of stuff. You can also think about lead through an existential and emotional lens. This is where lead can be seen or felt as the heaviness of melancholy or depression. I think Jung called lead melancholy, existential melancholy. That heaviness that keeps you pinned down, that feeling that life is joyless and colorless and meaningless. Depression, shame, dullness, these are all the emotional and existential textures of lead. There's a lot more to lead. Lead is very layered because it's the individual, but I can't fit everything into a TikTok video. Regardless, when we put all I've said together, you have the image of the unrefined human being. He is spiritually asleep. He is psychologically unaware. existentially weighed down, emotionally stuck. This person is hardened like metal, rigid in their ways, dense and immovable. And this is where Saturn's symbolism now folds back in. The relationship between Saturn and lead is very experiential. Saturn is the cosmic law of limitation. Lead is how that law is lived in the human being. Saturn sets the boundary. Lead is the weight of being bound. Saturn is the archetype. Lead is the embodiment of that archetype in flesh and in psyche or spirits. Where Saturn is time, lead is how time presses on the unconscious person as maybe the fear of mortality. Where Saturn is form, lead is rigidity. So, for example, the hardened ego structure of the unconscious person who is resistant to change. I know we've met one person like that. Where Saturn is gravity, lead is the density that drags the soul down and away from ascension or self-actualization. Remember, I'm speaking symbolically, but there's also a paradox with Saturn, because the same Saturn that hardens, that calcifies and weighs down is the same Saturn that is the devourer, Kronos. So let me make it make sense. If you're unconscious, Saturn will calcify your life into a leaden state. But for the conscious and aware person, this person can use Saturn's principle of endings to end hardened form. Do you get it? Remember, again, this is all symbolic. At the end of the day, it's all happening on the psychological level. So, to begin your entire alchemical process, your magnum opus, awakening, individuation, whatever you like to call it, you have to examine yourself from a place of humility and self-awareness, where you can say something like I am heavy with conditioning. I am poisoned by my past. I am stuck in my patterns. I have become dull and unaware. Make that your starting point.